It was fun. I was supposed to be back Sunday morning for church. My plane was 2 hours late. Good evening. Good evening. On behalf of the Kansas City, on behalf of the Kansas City, Kansas School District, I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to our board meeting. I hope you feel at home. We're family, and we're here to do the business of taking care of our children. At this time, I'd like to remind everyone of our board norms and protocols. We agree to respect differences of opinions in making decisions for the district, to follow best practices in managing the superintendent and the management of the board itself, to stay on task when conducting business for the district, including while at board meetings, to never surprise the superintendent or each other when conducting official business of the district, to read these norms at the beginning of each board meeting and at board workshops as a reminder of how to conduct our meetings, and then lastly, to continually self-check to determine if we are following our norms when conducting district business. At this time, I'd like to ask you all to stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. What? How are you doing? Okay. Ms. Westphal, would you do our roll call, please?
Harold Brown.
Present.
Maxine Drew.
Present.
Janie Humphreys.
Present.
Brenda Jones.
Present.
Wanda Brownlee Page.
Present.
Alvina Nguyen. Stacy Yeager.
Present. And I'd just like to say on behalf of Dr. Nguyen, she's taking care of some legislative business in regard to finances, and we want to make sure she's there. She is coming, she will be here, but yours truly will do the best that I can until she comes. So we just want her to be okay. At this time, we need approval of our regular agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Question? All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it, and so be it. At this time, we'll ask for communications. Dr. Faust?
Yes, so, wow, it seems like it's been a while since we've all gotten together. But we've had some great things happen in our school district over the course of the few weeks that we've been apart. First, I want to acknowledge some individuals who I've asked to come to the board meeting. So we had a couple teams that made it to the state in athletics. And so on the week before spring break, we had the opportunity to send our Lady Stallions to Emporia. And even though I still believe they're number one in my head, they finished at number 3. And so if we could just have them all, the Lady Stallions stand, our basketball team. So I have to tell a story about them, which they didn't know. I don't know. It's Cecil. Where's Cecil? Cecil here. Oh, so Cecil's behind them. So we got to the game on, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. I can't remember, Wednesday. And so they were playing, and like we were winning, like we were going. We were good. Good game. It was a great game, fast game. Our ladies have skill. Yes. They have basketball skills. And I will say that they outscored our males. So, you know, everyone's always thinking, well, it's going to be. The boys, I think their game ended in the 40s. That first game ended in the 60s. I think we were like 65, 64, somewhere around there. Both teams. So, congratulations on that, because most of the time, people will think that, oh, it's going to be a girls' game. It's going to be low scoring, foul after foul. No. We're talking about passing behind the back, reverse layup, stopping and moving, like all of that good stuff. 3 points. Like one time, I thought it was a shootout. Like they would go down, they would fire up 3, then we would go down, we were firing up 3. I was like, oh, wow, what is this? Even to the point where I couldn't even get my camera ready because I was wanting, but it was just a great excitement. So on Saturday, I get to the game, and we were in Emporia State, and so see the score, and so we were down. I think we were down by 12 or somewhere right there in the second quarter. So I was like, wait, what's going on? Like this, I had talked it up because my family had come. So I was like, we're going to Emporia. So they're like, where's Emporia? I'm like, just get in the car, we're going to Emporia. So drive up, 35, we get there. And I had talked the team up, and so we get in. My wife's like, wait, what is going on? I was like, no. So I called Cecil over, and I was like, wait a minute, what is going on? And he was like, sir, they're probably a little down because they lost. Like, no. I'm thinking I brought my family here to see our girls win this game. So I'm not going to say that I had anything to do with it. But after halftime, something happened.
All right.
And oh my gosh, our girls turned it on, and from there it was on. And I remember at the end when we thought the game was over and we had won, and I think it was 32, number 32. The ball, so the girl's dribbling, and she kind of grabbed the ball from the girl, and they called it a jump ball. So the buzzer went off, and we were all like, what is going on? We won. And they're like, no, jump ball. So we had to do it over, and so I was like, oh my gosh. So it was like a 2-point game, so you can only imagine what that was like. And so, but anyway, we won. We won. So I am not the sportscaster, nor do I do well at highlights of sports. So, that was just a quick 2-day. But what I can say is we brought home the trophy.
All right.
And so congratulations. And what I can say is that we have a young team. So I want to say the majority are 10th graders. We have 11th graders, but very few will be leaving us.
Right.
Just one senior on that team, and we went to the state. So I'm looking forward to what will happen next year, and I know that we're all college bound.
Yes.
Great grades, and we're going to continue that success, and we're going to bring more people in to take a preview, because, I'm sure that we can bring home a first, a number 1. Because, it was, which number 3 is great. That's great. But now we're hungry. We're hungry. So congratulations, Lady Stallions. I'm most proud of you. I definitely wanted to just bring you to the board meeting so that individuals could see who you are. We are going to, you'll be back at the next one so we can actually shake everyone's hand. But I thought it was just, the best that we bring them so they could have their moment and see that, so the board, you can see them, because they're number 3. They finished number 3 in the state.
That's great.
And so that is so thank you so much. Other updates is that we are looking for, we're going to return into the spring, and things are fast moving. One of the things that I wanted everyone to know is that this year has been a whirlwind, because we are already in middle of March, and I'm still trying to find out where's August. Like, August was just here. Yeah. And so, but we have work to do. We are getting our teams ready and making sure that we are pulling ahead. This year has been a year where we are literally, the team is shining the spotlight so that we can see where are the areas, what is it that we need, what are we looking forward to next year. But believe me, the plan that we have in place is still moving forward, and the goal is still to make sure that our students are getting the best education possible and setting high expectations. But I want to thank everybody for the work and the hard work, because we're there. We are getting there. It's first recognizing what we have, and believe me, if we can take basketball teams to the state and finish at number 3, our academics should be right behind it. That's right. Or actually in front of it. So I want us to know where we're going and how to get there. Right. And so we're going to be there. We're going to be there. But I want to again say just thank you all for coming. I'm ready for this. This is going to be a good board meeting.
Okay.
We want to thank Dr. Faust for that update. For a minute, I thought Howard Cosell had said. We appreciate that.
Get a little excited.
Okay. At this time, we'll have board updates.
Stacy, you have any updates?
You guys can go.
Okay. Well, it was a very, very busy week before spring break. Miss Brenda and I made a lot of stops, but we got to visit elementary schools. I went to New Stanley, Whittier, and Grant. You have to go see Grant's new library if you haven't been in there. It is phenomenal. Just, oh, so exciting. Arrowhead had a play, The Wizard of Oz and Toto 2. That was really, really good. I went back and watched it that night, too, so I got to see it twice. Casey Healthy Kids had a lunch and listen event that Miss Brenda and Miss Drew and I went to. It was very interesting to watch our kids interacting with things they want to see happen in their city. These are elementary kids. Our faculty has an art show at the West Branch Library. You have to go see it. It is, I mean, I knew we had talented artists in our district, but when you walk in there and see what they have created, it's just wonderful. Drop by and see it. White Church had a music program. And you know how those little ones are, the kindergartners and the first graders are always so fun to see. They get so excited and they wave their little hands at their parents. There was a breakfast last week at Donnelly College to give us information on their expansion and how much they enjoy working with our district, with our students. It was very informative. And last night, Sumner had a vocal music concert. We got to have a preview of some of the songs the one group's going to be singing in New York this week. And this morning, I made it to the Noble Prentice Library finally because I was at the lunch and listen when they did the dedication. The library is beautiful. Of course, there's still boxes sitting around because it takes a while when you have to move your home from one room to another, but the seating and everything in that library is wonderful. So we're very, very privileged to have someone donate something like that to us like they did. And I think that's it.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to just say good evening to everybody. Good evening. I did attend on February 28th, I attended the Kansas Council PTAT, and Brenda and Janie Humphreys was there as well. And then I did something new and different that I decided to do. I joined our fitness center here within the school district so that I can go and work out regularly. And I'm very impressed with everything that is there. As she mentioned, we did attend on March the 7th the Champions for Health Lunch and Listen, which is at the Kaufman Conference Center in Kansas City, Missouri. And they gave each school a $1,000 donation for whatever their project was. And Emmy Pearson was there, and they wanted a walking trail and pedometers. And then the students had to make a presentation, and if it was winnable, they would give them an additional $1,500. Well, come to find out, another school in Kansas City, Missouri did win the prize, but we found out after it was over, Emmy Pearson came in second. And so for the last few years, they have been coming in first. And so therefore, that was very interesting to sit there and have lunch with the students, healthy lunches with them so that they could talk and share their thoughts and their ideas of how they're trying to go into their community and expand and help their other students at the school as well as parents understand that exercise is very important. And so that was very enlightening for me. And then overall, I did attend the Wizard of Oz, and then I met with Kristen Scott at Francis Willard. Last time we were here, I mentioned that I wanted to visit the elementary schools because I wasn't aware of them. And I was greatly impressed by seeing Mrs. Pike and her staff being there. The kids were actively engaged. I attended a class where English is a second language, and there were students constantly doing something. The classroom was not out of control. They were working individually, trying to learn the English language, and I was very impressed. I'm in the process of setting up with Kristen another schedule so that I can go visit another school. And so I'm just greatly appreciative of the fact that since I've been a part of the board, I can go out and look and learn as much as I can about our district, because I was limited in middle school and high school knowing about it. But now I'm branching out, and I just want to say thank you to everybody that I've worked with, because I do appreciate the idea that I am learning. Thank you.
Very good, very good.
I want to thank the board. At this time, we'll have the KCKPS police officer swearing-in ceremony, which will be conducted by Ms. Drew.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Faust, family, friends, guests, and colleagues. Officers, why don't you come on up forward here. Tonight we have Dimitri Alvarez, Officer Aaron Circlebearer, Officer Lewis Goins, Officer John J.D. Myers, and Officer Christopher Thompson. While you guys are taking your, how do you want them presented? Right there's fine for you?
I would like to stand over here and have them face.
There we go. Gentlemen, if you just take your back up there to the desk. There we go. So while they're getting in place, a little educational information, because I think it's always an opportunity. We, as police officers for the school district, get our power and authority, like other police officers from county, state, and cities. We get our power of authority from the Board of Education. This is a good example of this group of gentlemen that's up here right now, that there's about several different ways. We hire officers that have Kansas jurisdictional authority. We also have officers that come from out of state with other jurisdictional authority. Officer Aaron Circlebearer came from out of state, but he got his Kansas commission through a reciprocity class, which is 40 hours at KLETC. We have Officer J.D. Myers that will be going this Friday for a challenge test. That's an 8 hours challenge test. And we have Officer Christopher Thompson, who will be attending class 257 at KLETC, and that's from June to September. So this is a moment that we really don't have this depth of educational background, and also what we're trying to do in the school district as we're growing our police department. Board members, you have their bios. Gentlemen, if you're ready, please go ahead and raise your right hand and take the oath of office.
Would you all please repeat after me? On my honor. On my honor. I will never betray my badge. I will never betray my badge. My character. My character. Or public trust. Or public trust. I will always. I will always. Hold myself and others. Hold myself and others. Accountable for our actions. Accountable for our actions. I will always. I will always. Uphold the Constitution of the United States. Uphold the Constitution of the United States. And the state of Kansas. And the state of Kansas. My community. My community. And the agency I serve. And the agency I serve. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. At this time, we'll have our bond updates by Mr. Dennis Covington, who's our Chief Financial Officer.
Good evening, Board and Superintendent. We're going to bring Jay Dunn up to give us an update on our bonds as of end of this month.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm John Schlick with J.E. Dunn Construction. Was here last month to give an update on the overall budget for the bond of 2016. In your packet, you shouldn't have got an updated spreadsheet. Not a lot of updates from the last month, but we did buy out or contract out 2 additional packages which was the new elementary school at West Park. That one came in a little bit under budget, so good news there. And then we also procured out, there was one piece of Rosedale that we had still had not bought out or contracted for when we went out to bid for that project last fall, and that was the re-roofing area. And that one did come in over budget, mainly just because once the design team was able to get and understand exactly what we had to do to replace that roof. There was some decking and some of the skin that had to be replaced as part of that package. But overall, we're still setting very well from a budget standpoint. We're still $1.2 million under budget, and with about 96% of the construction work contracted out. There's only 3 packages left, which the design is actually getting kicked off on, and that's the third elementary secure entrances and kitchen renovations, and then converting Bethel Elementary School into an early childhood, that package, and then the last one is the middle school career development spaces. So those are the 3 packages that we have not contracted for as far as that work, and those designs are just getting started.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board. Dr. Faust. We are going to go through some project updates. Excuse me. While they're pulling that up, what John talked about. By the way, Lee Moore. Hopefully, you guys know me here. So we've got about $179 million that John mentioned of contracted or pending GMP work. Our work in place to date is around $75 million, which is about 42%. So that gives you kind of a big picture look of what we've been able to execute so far with the bond issue here. So the first project is Rosedale Middle School. We're doing a kitchen and cafeteria addition there. We also have some renovation work. We are happy to say we were able to get about 95% of the roof complete since the last time we met. So that's huge for starting interior. You can see some of the interior work going. We're doing some spray fireproofing and doing all of our mechanical, electrical, plumbing overhead. So we have been hit a little bit by weather on that project, and we're looking into that right now, but we're hoping to get skin, brick, and windows started here soon too. Next project is Wellborn Elementary. We were able to do the architect punch list last week for about 2/3 of the building, and we're going to finish the punch list this week. We are looking good. Obviously, you can see in the pictures we're pretty far along on that project. We have your furniture, fixtures, and equipment scheduled for the first part of April to get that moved in, and we will be kind of wrapping that up before the summer, and you guys will have all the access you want to it once school's out. So,
Like the name.
So beautiful.
and we're gearing up for the site work. We still have a bunch of site work to do there, and we'll tear down 2 buildings.
Nice.
John Fisk is the next project to talk about. Happy to say since the last meeting we were able to get structural steel erected and all of the precast. We finished up the precast yesterday. So as we talked last time, show back up from spring break, you got an instant building. So we will get going on roofing and MEP, overhead, all that good stuff, but we're looking good on that project. Next project is Gloria Willis New Middle School at Coronado. So we are, you'll see some pictures there. We've got the gym equipment complete. The theme of basketball that we were talking about earlier, we're going to start the wood floor this week in that project. So you can see some of the finishes. We're about roughly 80% complete with all the finishes in the lower level of that building. We're working our way from bottom to top, doing carpet and doors starting this month. But looking in pretty good shape there on that project as well. Carl B. Bruce, this one, not a lot to report since the last time. We've all seen the weather. We've been impacted pretty significantly the month of February and March weather-wise. So we've been unable to really get this thing out of the ground, if you will. So working with your administration staff on assessing the schedule impact and what that means. But we have a critical date we're trying to hit of April 22nd for the rammed aggregate pier contractor. That's really the next contractor we have after building pad is complete. So working towards that and figuring out what we can do with the schedule on that one. One I don't have any pictures on, but I did want to report our work package 12, which is Lowell Bruni Elementary School. We were able to start tree clearing last week, and we are moving in heavy equipment this week to start mass excavation, start moving some dirt and getting that project going. So good news on that one as well. So that's pretty much it, unless there's any questions. And then I want to introduce Lauren Kepler. She handles our business development for K through 12. She's also heavily involved with your bond issue and is going to talk a little bit about our student involvement. Thank you.
Dr. Faust, Board, good evening. Great to see you.
Good evening.
So I believe the last time I kind of provided an update on our student engagement and teacher engagement efforts was in May at the special board meeting at the Logistics Center that J.E. Dunn houses. So wanted to kind of update you on kind of where we're at, how we ended 2018, and then what we're planning for 2019. Really exciting stuff. So to kind of close out the year in the fall in 2018, we were a big sponsor of the Building and Construction Trades Expo held at Wyandotte High School. Great expo. It had both the trades and then the colleges, local and around the state, that came, and the students could really go around and kind of see both options and what careers really fit with them. We provided some virtual reality, a setup there that the kids absolutely loved. They could jump, from downtown buildings to downtown buildings, so really cool stuff. Had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun there as well. We also had our K-12 operations lead kind of mentor part of the Schlegel Capstone project, and that was kind of ended out 2018. So this year, what we're up to in 2019, as you know, we're part of the Diploma Plus meetings district-wide, so we have been engaged in those. We also serve on both the J.C. Harmon and the Wyandotte advisory boards, so I'm close with both Robert Hoffman and Tara Lindahl, the college and career facilitators there, on how we can really get engaged in those ACE academies at both of those high schools. So you heard about the program we did with the Wyandotte students, that when we took them through our logistics center, Hollis and Miller showed us the plans, and then we actually got to go back to Wyandotte and they got to see some of the plumbing that was being redone and really walk the site. So that was a great learning opportunity. We're looking at doing something similar with Harmon this year, because we will be back in there during the summer doing some of the administrative spaces. So looking forward to that and engaging a different high school. On February 27th, we did a fun event at Coronado. They've got Glory Willis that they can really see come to life. So we did a crayons to CAD activity, partnered with Hollis and Miller and MKEC, the civil engineer. So we kind of walked them through that process of kind of how it starts, and it's just a concept, and then the considerations you have to take throughout as it becomes a real project. And then from the construction side, what you have to consider from a site building process. So kids loved that. And they had some great designs and ideas that they were doing themselves in their classroom. On May 2nd, we will be at New Chelsea doing a career day. So we've got some of our internal folks that are working on the projects, gearing up for that. And then along from the teacher side, don't want to forget about that side of things. Last year, we were able to host 4 teachers as part of our Dunn 101 program. So they actually got to come to J.E. Dunn's headquarters and go through the courses that our project management team actually goes through. So that not only could they learn a little bit more about construction, but they could meet some peers that they could call upon with questions or ideas and kind of bounce some things off of them. And we're also planning to do more of those this year, and I've talked to both the career and college facilitators to set those up. And the most exciting thing that I want to end with are our internships. So some of you have heard about Ricky Bowie and what he's kind of done. He was from Sumner, so in 2017 and 2018, his junior and senior years at Sumner, he spent the summer with us as an intern. What's really cool, he went to Pitt State for construction management. So he's in his first semester there. He calls and he's like, can I come work for winter break? So we're like, yes, we need you, come. So that was great to have Ricky back. And he actually got to work really closely with the project team. On Monday, Manuel from Wyandotte is starting with us as an intern. And this is a little bit different from Ricky's program, but what we're doing with Manuel is a 6 to 8 week, we're working on that timeline, rotational kind of experience for him where he will go through each different department within our company and spend a lot of time actually dedicated to our project management team working on KCK projects. So that's going to be really a great experience for both him and our team. So we're really excited, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can we ask any questions?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering, does Dunn offer any kind of scholarships for seniors who will be graduating this year?
We support a lot of organizations, including the foundation, your foundation, that does offer scholarships. So I would say that's one way that we're a really big supporter. For the past 2 years, we have been the corporate sponsor for the golf tournament. So that money is benefiting students directly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we try to do different things as well, but that's specifically for your district.
And you mentioned 2 internships. Do you see somewhere in the near future that there could be more than just 2?
Yes, and right now I think what we're trying to do is be very deliberate about making this a great quality experience for that student. And to be honest, at JE Dunn we have had high school interns, but as far as really diving deep into the project, usually that's at the college or post-high school level. So we're kind of on the front end and learning as we go, and we're really excited that it's KCK students that we get to learn alongside. So yes, hopefully in the future, definitely more to come on that. And right now, we just want it to be a very quality experience for those students. So definitely, if it can be replicated in the future, we'd love that.
Any other questions?
Before we end, our communications department has updated our website with a video on our bond projects. So I just want to show that to you guys, and then we'll close out this section.
Let's take a look at some recent bond project updates. Updates, please visit bond.kckps.org.
We'll be updating those pictures, and the team will go out and take some more and keep everybody abreast of how the projects are going. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this will be on the website?
Yes.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll have our legislative updates. Bill Brady.
We may have to come back to it because he wasn't sure how quickly he'd get here from Topeka, so we may have to wait till he gets here and just skip ahead.
Okay.
He's in the same. Melvin here. With Melvin here.
Okay, now we're going to move to our community comments. But before we have the presentation from Melvin Williams, just want to remind everyone about our policy. It says the provision of a meaningful educational experience for USD 500 students is best achieved through the collaborative efforts of school personnel, parents, and the Kansas City, Kansas community. The effectiveness of this collaboration effort will be greatly enhanced by and through clear communication between the Board of Education and those collaborating with the betterment of students and the educational services provided by the school district. The following policy is designated to facilitate such communication. Application to and placement on the board agenda. To be placed on the agenda of a regularly scheduled board meeting, speakers must adhere to the following. No later than noon the day prior to the board meeting, speakers must advise the board clerk of their desire to speak and the topic to be addressed, and report to the board clerk at least 15 minutes before the board meeting. At the beginning of each board meeting, the board may set aside up to 20 minutes for community comments. Prior to the community comments portions of the board agenda, the board president shall inquire of the clerk whether any persons have made applications to address the board. If an application has been made, the president shall review the rules of the community comment portion of the board agenda. Speakers will also be provided with an explanation of the necessity of one-way communication from the public to the board. Rules for speaking. Persons eligible to participate in the community comment portion of the board agenda must adhere to the following rules and procedures. At the beginning of their remarks, speakers must state their name. The speaker's address and telephone number shall be recorded on a roll to be maintained by the board clerk. This requirement will permit the board to direct their concerns to the proper school officials for response and follow-up. Speakers must limit their remarks to 3 minutes, which may include questions by the board. Speakers will be timed and advised when their time has expired. Extensions may be granted upon majority vote of the board. Speakers may only address the board about policy-related issues and general community concerns. Derogatory or critical remarks about specific district personnel or students are prohibited. These matters are deemed confidential and must first be presented to the appropriate administrative personnel. Similarly, district personnel may not bring personal matters to the board at this time. There are established complaint and grievance procedures which are designated to address such matters. Speakers wishing to submit written materials to supplement their remarks should make 12 copies for proper distribution. If there is a hot issue, speakers will be encouraged not to duplicate the remarks of others. Instead, speakers should seek to introduce new points and/or perspectives so that everyone's concerns may be heard. If a person wishes to discuss a topic which is already on the board agenda, the speaker's comment will be deferred until that item is called for discussion. The speaker will be permitted to comment as determined by the board president or presiding officer. The speaker must adhere to the 3-minute time limit. Patron requested agenda items. Any patron may request addition of a specific agenda item and shall notify the superintendent 7 days prior to the meeting and state the reason or reasons for the request. The superintendent shall determine whether the request can be solved by staff without the patron's appearance before the board. If not, the superintendent shall consult with the board president, and the patron's request may be placed on the next regular board meeting agenda. Handling complaints, the superintendent may refer complaints to the board only if a satisfactory adjustment cannot be made by a principal, the superintendent, or other appropriate staff members in accordance with compliance and/or grievance procedures established by board policy or applicable negotiated agreement. So at this time, we'll have Melvin Williams. His topic is student dress code policy. Is Mr. Williams here?
He didn't check in.
Okay. Well, we just wanted to make sure we were clear about policy. There's nothing like a good understanding. Okay, so we will proceed, but he did have the opportunity, and that's the important part. Okay.
Amen.
Okay, now we'll have report of the superintendent.
Good job.
I'd ask that the Kansas City Board of Education accept a presentation on Altuve Balance by Jess Gardner as submitted by Dennis Covington, Chief Financial Officer, Kristen Woodbury, Executive Director of Business, and as recommended by myself, Superintendent.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
Jess, if you will come forward. Prior to my arrival here, Dr. Faust and I had conversations about transparency of the budget and management report. So in our search to meet those requirements, we reached out to Jess and her company, Allaview, and she's going to walk you through that software. And it's not a change in our business software. It's something that pulls data out of that software.
Good evening, Dr. Faust. Good evening, board. How are you this evening? Good. I am joining you from Baltimore, Maryland today, and excited to talk about one of my very favorite topics, which is financial transparency. So just a quick show of hands, how many of you guys are interested in the district budget and spending? Yes, I tend to be very popular at board meetings. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the work that we do, and a quick background on myself. My name is Jess Gartner. I'm the CEO and founder of Allaview, and prior to founding Allaview, I was a middle school teacher in Baltimore City. I see some looks in the back of your head, like what's the connection there? Budget software, middle school social studies teacher. Oh. Well, the connection is that I was a social studies teacher who did not have the resources that I needed to give my students the best education every day. I was lacking basic supplies like paper, textbooks. Any teachers in the audience here who have maybe experienced that once or twice? Yeah. Very common problem, right? People on the board. And I said, how does that happen? And how do we get educators who are closest to students every day involved in these discussions about finance strategy and equity? Because we know that not all students need the same things every day at school. So our mission is to ensure student success by empowering educators and administrators to ensure that resources are strategically and equitably aligned to meet the needs of students. We have 3 core focus areas. One is strategic budgeting. So when you come and sit in the board meetings and you talk about the strategic priorities that Dr. Faust is setting for the district, how do we ensure that the dollars and the day-to-day purchases are actually aligned to those long-term goals and priorities? How do we ensure that the things that we're actually spending go according to the plan we set? Because as I'm sure you all have figured out, budgets and spending, not the same thing. In many districts, those look wildly different. So how do we ensure that we have alignment between those two? And if we are making changes, are they strategic? Are they thoughtful? Are they well informed? And at the end of the year, and as we're going through our projects, how do we ensure that we're evaluating the equity and the effectiveness of these resources? Are we just doing what we've always done, or are we really taking a critical look at the resources that we're putting in teachers' hands and classrooms every day? We have been in business for about 6 years. We are currently helping districts manage over $10 billion for over 1 million students. We work with districts across the country as small as 900 students and as large as almost 300,000 students in a district. So believe me when I tell you, we have seen it all. You cannot surprise me anymore, although some districts still try. We work with a lot of districts that have some very similar demographics and similar challenges as KCK. Some things that we're doing in some districts that I think will be similar to the things that we'll work with KCK on. And your neighbors over in Kansas City, Missouri, we're doing some work to help with their ESSA preparations and some changes to their chart of account structure. We're getting ready to roll out a public portal of their finances. Down in Richmond, Virginia, closer to us, we're working on ensuring that they spend their state dollars as intended and make sure that they stay in compliance. In Metro Nashville, we're doing priority-based budgeting, ensuring that every dollar is aligned to an initiative that the educators are setting with the finance staff. In Indianapolis, we're empowering principals to work with their local communities and teachers to make the best decisions for their schools. And in DC, we're working with getting principals involved in the day-to-day management of spending. We have created a framework for strategic and equitable finance that we call SMART Pathways. It only took me about 4 years of staring at these challenges to realize that they formed a very nice acronym for us. After talking to Mr. Covington and Dr. Faust, we have determined that the two that we're going to focus on in the first year are the management and monitoring pathway, which I absolutely recommend as a starting point. You've got to make sure that your house has a strong foundation before you go shopping for the fancy window treatments. And transparency, particularly because we know this is something that you all have expressed is a keen desire of the board to have transparency in this area. But as you can see, there's a lot of opportunity for us to continue to grow as partners with you and move on to some of these other pathways as we develop our partnership. So the two priorities that we'll be working on are streamlining reporting and management of spending against budgets throughout the year and increasing transparency with the community about school budgets and per pupil spending. This is also very timely because federal legislation, as I'm sure you guys are aware, is now requiring school level actual per pupil spending. So it segues really nicely with a compliance objective and will give the community a strong narrative about where dollars are going and how they're getting to students. So the timeline that we've laid out is hopefully after this evening, we're going to get to work on integration with the existing back-end finance systems. We'll work on that integration over about 60 days, and then we will start a pilot with the executive team with the goal of launching with a broader rollout with principals and department heads in the fall to give them better access. We want to make sure that the exec team has had time to QA the data, make sure that everything is connected well, with the goal of launching the public portal next January in time for you all to have that as you're going into the next budget season. And now I'm going to do a very quick highlights reel of what this actually looks like in real time. So everyone at the district that is given access will have a login to this web portal that will show their data in pretty near real time, and they will only have access to the dollars that they're personally responsible for. So you could give this to a principal and they might see a really clean view of just their own data. They can check on purchase orders that are flowing through the system, make sure they're really staying on top of those dollars. We made this with educators in mind, particularly with folks who don't have a financial background. We want to make it really easy and user-friendly for them, so they can really quickly see their accounts at a glance. Hopefully you won't see any that turn red and are overdrawn, but if you do, you can quickly drill down and see what's going on in those accounts and maybe what recent purchases might have overdrawn an account. And I think I actually heard you talking about the codes earlier. We all know that those financial codes are not made with humans in mind. So we want to make it real easy for you to find what you're looking for. So if you're looking for Title I spending, you can just do something like search Title I and quickly get to the data that you're looking for. So there's lots of fun that we can have with that. There's also a budget component here where you can actually build out your full budget, and you can give principals access to budgets for just their school so that they can weigh in on individual resources for their school as well as their staffing plans. You can do all of your staff planning in here, make sure that every position is funded. This really helps cut down on payroll errors, make sure that you're reducing any vacancies. A really good way to save the district money is to not plan to pay people twice. We actually saved, you laugh, but we saved a district $600,000 this year just by finding duplicate staff entries in their budget. So it's a really quick and easy way to save money. And then on the public portal side, we'll pull all of this data together, both at the district and school level, so that you'll have a quick snapshot of this data, really easy to digest. And we also include some explainer text here so that you know what you're looking at, why you're looking at it, what should you be taking away. And we can create one of these for each school so that you can track what's going on a monthly basis, drawdown rates of spending for the district, how they compare to the district average for a school similar to them, and then keeping track of budgeted versus actual values. So that is the very quick highlights reel. There's a lot more to dig into, but that's, if you guys have any questions, happy to answer, and we're really excited to pilot with you all.
How will this work with our present system? Is this going to be replacing?
No, it will. So we will do an integration in the back end. There's a couple different ways we do it, but we query the database directly, and every night we pull in a fresh feed of account and transaction level data. So we'll have all of that data in here, but this makes it really easy for particularly non-finance staff, principals, community members to see the data in a way that's really user-friendly, that doesn't require a lot of staff time to go through and translate things into Excel and make pivot tables. They can just really quickly, in a matter of seconds, drill down to what they're looking for.
So it will talk to what we currently have.
Mm-hmm.
And how much is this?
The pilot is $15,000.
So in looking at this, will this also help to speed up the process for that they may have as far as replacing staff? Because I saw the grid on there about funded, not funded, full-time, et cetera. Do you think does it generally help with those issues that may be occurring?
So right now, this is designed for the annual staffing and funding of staff challenges. However, we are hearing from a lot of our partners that they would like to use it to do daily position control changes. So that's probably something that we will have in development over the next year. And that is, we also do have some workarounds where districts can use this to true up those staff changes on a monthly or quarterly basis if they want to.
Okay, great. Also, how does it work when maybe schools are sharing funding? Do we have a different coding source for that? So like if two schools are sharing a bus or sharing resources, is it broken out like that? Or because are we looking at not exact figures, or how does that type of thing work?
You know, all the costs are will be charged to the appropriate school. So if, like, we split position 50-50, half the cost will flow to one school based on the budget code, which includes their school number, and then the other half will flow to the other school. So it will be real time, real data, no estimates.
Okay, great.
Will this make it easier next year when the principals start to do their building budgets?
Yes.
Less paperwork and more on the computer?
More analysis.
Yes, principals and working with principals is really a passion of our team. It's a big part of why we were founded, because principals are, next to teachers, are the closest to kids in terms of making budgeting and purchasing decisions. So it's really important that they're informed and capable of having strategic conversations, and nothing pleases me more than when a principal calls the Mr. Covington of the district and says, you allocated dollars to me for this, but we actually don't use that at our school. You should stop giving me money for this, and I would rather have something else instead, right? Instead of $30,000 in sub-spending, I would rather have a paraprofessional who can do literacy intervention with my kids. So creating that two-way communication really ensures that we're getting more precise resources on a school-by-school basis.
And so from the parent perspective, when we as parents look at this, and maybe we've asked the school and said, hey, why can't we do this in this funding? So will that help with that accountability too? When you say drill down for parents, is there a specific guide to help parents understand, well, sure, we would love to do that, but that may be Title I spending specifically for these allocations, or how does that part work?
What they would see, there will be some, as you said, some verbiage at the bottom that tries to explain exactly what those funds can be used for. It's not really going to be that descriptive where they could answer that question from looking at that display. That's more likely going to be a conversation that they're going to need to have with the principal.
So more parent communication as far as how they're looking at it, what they're seeing, and explanation. Because I just see us trying to increase communication.
Yes.
Because I can just envision parents contacting the board or ahead of their principals saying those type of things. So I think a great visual tool or video like you guys have done previously, explaining to parents, hey, this is what you're going to see, but the chain of command is still go to your principal, ask these questions, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, before we roll it out, we will have an information session at the various schools and on how to use it.
And I'm saying if you could add a video component of a recording so parents who cannot make it face-to-face can at least have a video.
Have it posted on our television station.
Yeah, or online YouTube, Thank you.
So one thing I want to talk about is the 15,000. So of course, all of our money this year is accounted for. And so this is what's considered new money. So this would have to be in the next year's budget. And so we had spoken with Jess about next year's budget and how that would be funded because it's a new product, new money that hasn't been put into our budget. And so can you speak to that?
Sure.
How that would work?
We offered to start the invoicing on this in the next fiscal year because we want to make sure that you have the time to get this set up before the new fiscal year starts so that you can kind of be ready to go. So we're just going to extend the invoicing schedule. I mean, we're a small company and, have the flexibility to do it, and we want to make sure that you guys have the tools you need when you need them. So happy to be flexible on that and make it work for you guys.
And then the other part of that was timeline of who sees it first. And so before it would go out to everyone, of course, the executive level, they would have full knowledge, so we'd be able to work out all the kinks to it so we can actually ask those particular questions. So those department heads would be able to see their budget and say, hey, have we considered? So then it would move to the next level where the principals would see it. But what it's happening in some schools or may not be happening in schools is you would have your school-based leadership team. And so technically they're meeting once a month and they're going over the budget. So we would be expecting now when they're at their leadership team meeting, they're talking about it. Now everyone can just pop up the computer and say, hey, what about this? We can have, so it's a school community thing where they can talk about it. And then you add in a parent who's also part of that team. You have a business leader who's part of that team. And they're all saying, well, hey, why can't we spend this Title I money on buying a playground or playground equipment? Then that's where they talk about and say, well, you can't do that with this type of money because that money is designated for this. So yes, it'll spark conversations, but it also provide us with clarity. That's all we were wanting to do. The budget will be set. It'll be filled where it's, it's not where we're going in and it's like, oh, well, I think we should move 10,000 over here. We're looking at, they can't move any money. They're just able to see it. So I think that's the transparency part. And then we can ask the question, so why did we spend $12,000 on kickballs? And that's a discussion, I think, for they'll see.
So to clarify, we're using Excel or something right now? Or what are we using right now?
Business Plus have some reports that we can pull out and the principals can run at any time that shows the raw numbers, but you can't drill behind them.
You can't drill down like we've asked before about where does this go, what is it, what the category is, how much. Okay, I just wonder. Thank you.
So it's not that they're hiding money, they just, at the principle of, they can't drill all the way down to that budget code, they'll get surface. But with this, they could click on the budget, and then, as you said, they could, if I'm at school 1, and if she put in there title, you would see everything under title, and then you could search for it that way, and it'll tell you.
Right. And that'll save time, I predict.
Yes.
Doing things so manually.
Oh, yes.
So if the pilot is 15,000, what does it normally cost?
The full rate is 63 to go full district wide.
So what's the time frame on the pilot?
August, to where we should at least have it where the 5 people can really test it.
What kind of tech support do you provide?
So all of our applications actually have live chat right from within the application. We'll see if my staff is still up on at this hour, but so we can just you can ping in to the live chat, and typically within a minute or two, you will get a response from our customer success team. We also offer the same chat by phone or email. Also, every district is assigned a district partner. You guys will be working with either Hannah or Kate in this district. There's Kate. She's on Mountain Time, so she's still on. These district partners all have a background in ed finance and data, and you will have bi-weekly or monthly check-ins with them. So in addition to the tech support that you get from our team, you also get some thought partnership, strategy, additional analysis with folks who are doing this work across the country, who can help you learn from best practices of other really progressive districts doing innovative things with finance strategy and resource equity. And they're a great partner for the superintendent, the CFO, and can really help with some of the change management aspects as well.
So 15,000 for the pilot. Now, do we get a credit of 15,000 if we purchase a 63,000?
That is mostly for the integration and the implementation and setup, which is a little bit more labor and time intensive on our side because we have to do all of the mapping to the chart of accounts and the back end systems. If you wanted to start it a little bit earlier than intended, then we can credit some of it to the regular contract.
And is that a yearly renewable fee?
Yes.
And what about updates to the system?
That is all included. All support, all updates, all maintenance is completely included, including training.
So one of the other things that you'll want to take into consideration, so when you are asking to pull check number 757, you'll be able to go into the system and pull check 5757, and you'll be able to look and see what check 757 was for. So this all originated from our board wanting to know more about the finances and the budget and where was the money going and what does it look like. And so, of course, the idea of no surprises. And so this would satisfy the no surprises. So you wouldn't have to have Wayne at the board meeting and he'd be at the board meeting, but not with his computer to say, okay, that check is for this and that's what this is for, because it instantly pulls that for you. And so this is all for, the board's request of where the finance is. There's got to be money in the budget, and so this will show you where the money is in the budget.
I will tell you, the vast majority of our districts, we find 10 times the amount of our contract or more in money that was unspent or duplicated or an accounting error. Every year, millions, I think we're coming up on hundreds of millions now, found, fixed, reallocated. Some of it is, accounting errors that would just kind of get lost in the shuffle. Some of it is grant money you didn't know you had. District pretty similar size to yours found $1.6 million in a title grant that they didn't realize was about to expire. We were able to quickly repurpose that to fund an entire summer program for their Title I population. And so, we love stories like that too, and we work hard to find those dollars for you too.
I'd love to see them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll have the approved proposed changes to the Student Code of Conduct.
So I'd ask that the Kansas City Board of Education approve the proposed changes to the Student Code of Conduct as submitted by Lisa Garcia Stewart, Director of Student Services, and as recommended by myself, Charles Faust, Superintendent.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening,
Dr. Faust. I appreciate being before you this evening, and I had an opportunity to meet with Mrs. Humphreys to review some of the edits that needed to be changed, some duplication of words, but otherwise, if the board will approve based on that, I will follow up with those edits to approve the Code of Conduct this evening.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it, so be it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And please check the editing, because that was a concern of Dr. Nguyen, to make sure that, everything is spelled correctly and got everything together.
Absolutely. I appreciate that feedback, and that's the opportunity I had to spend with Ms. Humphreys this afternoon, and much of it, since it's still our draft, we hadn't had the chance to go back, and we know some of the numbers were off, but absolutely, that's great feedback, and we will do that.
And do we have an editing team that looks over our materials?
I do not have an editing team, but I welcome anyone that wants to, because I will acknowledge, I shared with Mrs. Humphreys, I'm in the work, so in my mind, when I'm looking at it, it reads as, because I know the work. So it's very possible for me to miss a word because I'm like, oh, that's what I know that it should say. So we had a few giggles today just because I'm like, one of the words was duplicated twice, but because I know it reads, I was like, it absolutely should not have it in there twice. So I welcome that feedback and support.
If you could send it through once you've done
Absolutely.
your editing, things like that, just in case.
Absolutely. I appreciate it that you're willing to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back. We're honored to have, and give him a second to catch his breath, Mr. Bill Brady, who's here to give us updates.
Apologize for being late. I was part of the meeting with Representative Nguyen, and so I've texted her and said, I think I'm about 20 to 25 minutes ahead of you, so she's coming. And the hearing we had today was on Senate Bill 142. We basically have two bills that the legislature's considering now. 142, which passed the Senate last week by a vote of 32 to 8, and House Bill 2395, which is the House's version of school finance. The money that's in both of the bills is pretty similar. It would call for $90 million new money the first year, and that's quite a bit short of what The plaintiff school districts and Schools for Fair Funding have indicated that we believe would solve the Gannon 6 decision that we had last June. And that's what the legislature is doing this year. The House bill, in addition to the $90 million, the House bill has a lot of pretty difficult policy positions in it that we are not real excited about. And I have provided you a copy of the testimony that Schools for Fair Funding provided in opposition to 2395. The key part of 2395 that is concerning is that last year, if you recall, the legislature's response to not have enough money in the formula was a 5-year, $522 million plan, which is about $104 million each year for the next 5 years, starting with the current school year. KCK's portion of that is roughly about 4%. I mean, that's a general an amount that we would get of that total amount. So, and the court said last June that 522 wasn't enough, and that we basically that the legislature had missed 6 years of inflation, and they should come back. They don't have to mess with the formula. They just have to deal with the 6 years of inflation that they missed with their bill last year. So that's where we came up with the plan of $363 million with the new money to deal with the 6 years of inflation. We're talking about 1.44% inflation per year on roughly $3.2 billion. So that's roughly how you get the 60 so million a year. Well, the plan that originally the plan the state board that we had talked to about proposed that we just divide it into 4 pieces and add it to Senate Bill 522. So the school districts would get roughly $90 million a year for the final 4 years of the 5-year plan. The state board ended up recommending only $90 million one time and indicated the fact that school districts get to keep it for 4 years makes it $360 million. And that's where we kind of parted ways with the State Board of Education because in the past we've always approached more money for education as new money each year. As board members, you know that any money that you get from the state, any money that you put into the system, 85 to 90% of it's ongoing expenses. And so you can't get $90 million one year and expect that to even buy the same amount for the next year, or certainly not 3 years later. So that's the bone of contention. But the $90 million is in both bills, 2395, 142. The other problem with 2395 is that it cuts out the last 2 years of the 5-year plan. So, in other words, I said you got roughly $105 million for the next 5 years, and we're in the first year. It would eliminate years 4 and 5. And in addition to that, the bill also said we would have a CPI increase, cost of living increase, for future years after 2023, from 24 on each year. And that would help keep the formula consistent with inflation. And 2395 would stop that as well. So you can see 2395, I think, is a pretty erroneous bill and something, certainly we would not support, and we don't think the courts would approve it. I mean, if you just stop for a second and think, the court said last June 522 wasn't enough. And so if the legislature's response is 2395, they've cut off about 40% of the funding of 522 and added $90 million one time to us. So it's pretty deficient. I don't think that's what the legislature will do. I think they will probably pass 142, which gives an additional $90 million, puts it all on the base, so it gives school districts the ability to spend it wherever they want. That will put us back in court in May, and it'll be up to the Supreme Court to decide whether $90 million is the correct amount or 363, which is what we think the correct amount is, what they go with. So that's kind of where we are. I would anticipate that we'll have something through the legislature and signed by the governor next week, because the court hearing is in early May, and the process, I'm not an attorney, but as I understand the process, both parties have to have time to provide briefs, basically brief the court on what their position is on the bill that was passed this year. And of course, you can't do that till the bill's passed and signed into law, and it's not done yet. And the first briefs are due April 9th. So generally, I think in most hearings you want to give both sides 2 weeks or so to do that. So that would necessitate that the decision would hopefully be through the legislature in the next 7 to 10 days. So that's kind of where we are. It's been a difficult session. The legislatures and, of course, everybody, school districts are tired about the lawsuit too. I mean, we want it to be resolved, and we've won every time, and every time we've gone back to the legislature, we've never gotten a satisfactory response out of the legislature. So hopefully we can get it resolved here this spring. But I'd be happy to respond to any questions that you might have. I also provided you documents, the testimony, and then we did a summary by section of what was in 2395. So by section, and you can see it's got a lot of different provisions in it that are problematic. It has what they call a Hope Scholarship Act, which would allow a procedure where if a child is bullied in a public school, after hearing to determine that happened, the child would then be able to, parents would be able to take the child out of public schools and send them to a private school and take a percentage of the base aid funding with them to the private school. You know, that's questions about whether that's constitutional, whether you can use public funds to do that or not. So there's a lot of different provisions. There's a provision that says that you can only provide, a district can only provide ESL funding for 4 school years. So after 4 school years, it would basically stop. You couldn't get reimbursed from the state through the ESL formula, irregardless of whether the child was, properly trained, and so it is just a lot of problems in it that, and I don't think those sorts of provisions are going to be adopted, but that's kind of what we're dealing with that bill. And then the final thing that I put in your packet was a draft that the 4 superintendents received. We received one here in KCK. It came from Senate Ed Chair, and basically they were asking us to drop the lawsuit in exchange for getting the $90 million worth of funding. And the copy that I gave you was the one that I got from the Dodge City superintendent. He was the first superintendent to send it to me. So your superintendent got one too, but I made these copies, and I noticed I just had that. So all 4 superintendents got it, and then I attached to that the letter that I sent back after working with the 4 soups and our response. Essentially, the 142, we think, because it's spent the right way, the $90 million is spent the right way. It's put on the base. It gives the districts the ability to prioritize, spend it where it's the most need is in KCK, for example. That's the best way to go. We think that solves the problem for a minimum of 1 year with the $90 million. So it's a possibility the courts could say it's not enough money, but you're good for a year, and we'll give you another year to deal with the remainder. So that's a real possibility. So that's, we've been pretty busy this session, and I've been bugging Dr. Faust quite a bit with calls, but we're hanging in there, and hopefully we'll get something that we can work with out of the session next week, and then we'll be in court in May, and hopefully we'll get this resolved. Questions, anyone?
So we definitely don't want the House bill to pass.
Definitely. Definitely.
We agree with the majority of the Senate bill. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Senate bill, it spends it the right way, and it's just, the question we have is we just don't think it's enough money to deal with the 6 years of inflation. I provided, in our testimony, I provided the original mathematical equations we got from the state board, and basically they lay it out there as to what the page P3, what we were anticipating would solve the lawsuit was, you can see on at the top the chart, the 5-year plan, that's already existing law. So these are the amounts that if the legislature does nothing, we'll get the $415 million. The remaining 415, it was 522. We got the first amount in the first year is not on here. So 415, and then the inflation amounts should total 363 million. And what we've got right now in 142 is we've got the money distributed the proper way, but we only have the 92. We don't have the amounts for 2021, 21, 22, and 22, 23. Those aren't in the bill. So those total roughly $270 million. So that's a significant amount of money.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the updates.
We thank you for that
very much.
information. And please continue to fight for us and for our students, parents, and everyone. We need it.
It's a privilege to work for the district, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep fighting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we have approved appointment of treasurer and resolution designating agents for KPERS.
I ask that the Kansas City Board of Education approve the appointment of treasurer and a resolution designation and an agent for the Kansas Public Employee Retirement System KPERS as submitted by Dennis Covington, Chief Financial Officer, and it's recommended by myself, Charles Faust, Superintendent of Schools.
I bring that before the board because we have a sad announcement that Christian Woodbury has resigned from the district, and so she's our current treasurer and designee for KPERS. So we will be installing Tracy Kaiser to replace her in those two roles.
Is Tracy here tonight?
I don't know if Tracy's here tonight.
No, she's not.
I move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we approve Ms. Kaiser as our Tracy Kaiser as our treasurer. Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. So be it. Thank you so much. The next item, declare intent to close Parker Elementary School at the end of the 2018-19 school year.
So the Kansas City School Board of Education, the declaration is the intent to close Parker Elementary School at the end of the 2018-19 school year and hold a public hearing on the proposed closings as submitted by Dennis Covington, Chief Financial Officer, and as recommended by myself, Charles Faust. We have representatives from the senior staff that will share a presentation and update you on where our proposal is with the school.
Good evening, Board. Dr. Faust.
Good evening.
We are here to share some brief information about some background that will give you some indication as to the discussion that is leading us to make this recommendation for the intent, as Dr. Faust just described. So, as you know, one of our bond items that has been passed, you've heard about West Park. We've already named the new school that will be the future merge for Parker and William Allen White at the beginning of the 2021 school year, which means that Parker would have closed at the end of the 1920 school year, this next school year. As it reads in your agenda, we have noticed some declining enrollment at Parker over the last few years, and as you are probably well aware, we are in the business of the deep business right now, planning for next school year, and that's been going on for the past several months. And with that planning, it has been discovered, or it was recognized that next year the call for staff is just for 4 teachers at Parker. And so knowing that there was only 4 teachers planned for an elementary school, that led to a deeper dive into who are the students at Parker, and is there a possibility that we might want to look at proposing the close of Parker at the end of the 18-19 school year. So Dr. Miguel is going to talk about some of the instructional implications. Ms. Garcia-Stewart will talk a little bit about some of the enrollment status right now, and then Mr. Covington, I always want to call him doctor, will talk a little bit about the financial implications as well, and we'll talk about communication approaches that we are planning at this time.
Good evening. So as Dr. Shaw indicated, these are the instructional considerations that we discussed, and the first thing that we took into account is only 4 allocations for teacher allocations for Parker due to student enrollment. We still have 6 grade levels at the school, which means more than one grade level would be a split grade level. For example, a K1, a 2-3, a 4-5. And knowing that we are focused on standards-based instruction, and the focus of our work is to ensure that teachers truly understand the standards for the grade level and plan tasks at the right level of rigor and deliver quality instruction. We know that that would be a challenge, now focusing on more than one grade level. We also encourage teachers to engage in professional learning communities for their own professional development and for collaboration in the planning of those tasks for students. Well, it's very challenging. Usually those professional learning communities are grade level. So it's very challenging when you are the only teacher at that grade level, which is the case this year. It kind of gets in the way of the teacher's professional development and having someone to learn the standards better and plan those quality instructions. So when we started thinking about these instructional considerations, that's when we started, as Dr. Shaw said, to take a deeper look at, does it make sense to wait another year, or should we move the dates for the closing up a year to make sure that students get quality instruction. Ms. Garcia-Stewart is going to talk to you now about the numbers at each of the schools.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening. Good evening.
Well, in preparation, we want to share with you the number of students that are enrolled and how we will share with you a broad view of how we'll begin to plan to meet the needs of the families, the parents, and the students, which I know is equally important to you, as is instruction. So currently at Parker, there are 64 students, K through 4th grade, and there are 20 students that do not reside in that attendance area. So you may have heard me talk at some point about child care permits or requests to enroll. So the Department of Student Services will work with each of the family members and their children and or the guardian, parents, father or mother, to work with them to identify their school of origin, meaning the school in their attendance area, and or work with them to provide options other than Parker for childcare. So notifying them earlier, even a year sooner, will help them prepare for the transition to move to the new school and or moving into the middle school, which they will now feed into. So this will really help the preparation and transition. So we wanted to share those numbers with you. Equally, as we think about the students that are in the attendance area of Parker, the other students, the other 44 that are in that attendance area, they will move to William Allen White. At William Allen White, there are currently 230 students, and there are 44 non-resident students. So we will work, again, as we will with Parker, with those students that require additional consideration, working with them one-on-one to provide them options for childcare, other than obviously William Allen White, because we'll be moving 44 students into William Allen White that are currently enrolled at Parker. So we will work with them to identify some options, and meeting with them as early as we can begin to plan those details will help us to establish the time frame and that they will need that support. So we wanted to share that data and those numbers with you.
In closing a school, there are certain staff members that we consider building level staff, not teachers. And so I've listed you the positions that are tied to a building, and those positions will be eliminated from the budget, resulting in a savings of $428,439. That is a cost savings that we can redirect and do something else with.
So let me ask you a question. Those people there, will they be somewhere else in the district or just lose their job completely?
Well, we will very likely look to, again, based on their standing in the district, a lot of these positions could probably be just reallocated. We'll have open positions, and they can apply for those transfers.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. So as we think about what this implies for students and parents, we started thinking about, so how do we communicate with parents? So we are planning community meetings for parents at both schools, meetings for staff to let them know what the discussion is, and of course they'll have questions such as what happens to us, which you just asked. We are planning community meeting for Parker parents who would move to W.A. White so that they can tour the building. Both principals will be at both of the community meetings so that parents can hear from the current principal, but also the students who are moving to W.A. White meet the principal at W.A. White. We are planning to communicate with parents via voice messages, letters to announce the meetings, and then at the meetings also deliver a written letter explaining everything that was discussed at the meeting.
So what will happen to the physical building? We just wipe it out and close it down?
We will have alternative plans for that building, but nothing has been finalized yet. It would not be demolished.
I can come up with a plan. I have several things that we would like to do with it.
I'm just saying, we're leasing out space, we're renting places, we're spending money on other properties, renting and leasing it. So I think we need to come up with a plan to utilize that building, since we own it and it's ours, then to continue leasing or whatever.
There are lots
other
of
areas.
plans that we will be evaluating.
So when you get those, I think it would be valuable just to share so we can see that cost savings as well.
So that was one of the things we didn't want to overstep, because we had to bring it to the board before we wanted to say what we want to do with our the building. And again, thinking about the staff who are there, you know, a lot of this happens through attrition, and so as positions will be filled, because of course this is the hiring season. We do know that in some of our alternative schools prior to this year, some were not receiving a social worker. So we split the time because they were getting a full-time social worker for the 54 students, and we had our alternative schools who were not getting, so we moved them, you know, where our resource teachers there, just nurses, all of those things. So some of our nurses may have 2 schools, so we are looking at, making sure that we are leveling the playing field to make sure that all, but again, making sure that we fulfill all of the HR requirements for everyone so that it's not that anyone is told that you're not able to work in the school district, but would have that opportunity to apply for positions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So under the statute, what you guys have to do tonight, if you're going to move forward on this, is there has to be a motion, a second, and a vote to move forward with the recommendation of the notice of intent to close the school, and then you guys have to set a date for a public hearing. After the public hearing, at the next board meeting, you'd adopt a resolution to formally close it next year. That makes sense?
What do you see?
Brenda moved what he said.
I moved for what he said.
Well, you're going to need to set a date for the public hearing. And
a date for the public hearing?
Is there a certain length of time that we have to post it before that?
you got to post it 10 days before and not more than 20 days before. So it's got to be at least 10 days out and not more than 20 days out.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved that we follow through with the proposal that was submitted to close Parker.
A public hearing.
Yeah,
so there's two things that have to be.
There's two things we're doing here.
Yeah.
One is you're approving, somebody's moving to approve the notice of intent to close Parker Elementary School building. So that's the first thing you're doing. And then the second thing is you're setting a date for a public hearing on that. And then we'll come back after the public hearing. The next meeting after the public hearing, you'll formally adopt a resolution to either close it or not based upon what you learn at the public hearing.
Okay. So if I
Two action items.
heard you correctly, Ms. Jones had made a motion to approve a resolution to close Parker Elementary 2018-2019 at the end of this school year. It was second. Okay. By Ms. Yeager. Questions? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Now we need to currently, right now, set a date for a public hearing. And then after the public hearing, then we can come back the next time we meet and make it official.
That's correct.
Okay. So if someone has a calendar.
Dennis is moving to the mic here.
We're going to hold those community meetings next week, so we can put the public hearing.
It's got to be 10 days out.
Got to be 10 days out.
That would be the 29th.
Otherwise, the public hearing has to be 10 days out.
Yeah.
No, we're proposing the community meetings next week, the public hearing at the next board meeting.
Well, no, 10 days out would be the 29th of March.
That's the minimum, 10 days.
Yeah, and
no
it can't,
more than 20.
when's the next board meeting?
April
9th.
So that'd be within the 20 days, right? So we could do that. You could have the public hearing at the next board meeting if you wanted to.
And that have given us a chance to go out to the community and explain what we're doing.
Yeah, that's fine.
April 9th.
So you're going to have the community meeting
next week.
Next week.
So our staff would go out and answer any of the community meetings, meet with parents, talk with them, go to both schools, and perform that. And then the public hearings would then come to the board meeting at that point.
Yeah, so so if that's what we're going to do, we need a motion to do that, but then we'd also need to post the public meeting and probably delay the start of the board meeting 30 minutes or something like that, whatever you want to set it for, so it wouldn't be the exact same time as the board meeting. In other words, it should be either 30 minutes before or something like that.
So April 9th.
So could we set the public meeting for, say, 4 o'clock on the same day as the board meeting?
You could, or you could set the public meeting for 5 o'clock and just start the board meeting at 5:30 or something like that.
Yeah, I would prefer that.
Whatever you want to do. It just shouldn't completely overlap.
Right, I would say it should start at 5.
Can we get a motion, please?
I make a motion that we have the public meeting for April 9th, 5 o'clock p.m. here at the central office.
And the school board meeting started at 5:30.
And the school board meeting start time pushed back to 5:30.
The motion on the floor. Okay. The motion on the floor is that we have the public meeting on April 9th at 5 p.m. It would last for 30 minutes with the board meeting to follow at 5:30. It was second. Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Anyone opposed? And that's what it shall be. Thank you.
Thank you.
So when these community meetings?
You're going to send us out an email about the community dates. You'll send us an email, you said.
Okay.
I'm killing you with the fan.
Okay, now we're on number 7, board discussions. Item A, board discussion on district dance team requirements.
So as Jody and Cecil are coming forth, it was asked that the dance teams from all the schools provide their requirements for attire, uniforms for their dance. So what they are passing out and what you have in front of you is each school's requirement. And so they're here for board discussion to talk and answer any questions that you ask.
It sounds right.
Did you keep a copy? Okay.
Take two, you said.
No, just take one.
The crisscross.
Yeah.
Look at it. Pass that down.
Dr. Faust Board, welcome you guys. I know you guys are off in the discussion. I did want to share with you guys, so the two handouts that you have, the first one is a compilation of what Jody Lynn we got from the schools, just as far as their different requirements regarding costumes. And then the second document, the staple, is just some safety information from KCKPS and NFHS regarding, glitter, hair, jewelry, fingernail safety guidelines that all of our schools follow. So I know a lot of times we don't think about those things, but when they are performing, and we don't want hair in the face and somebody trips and falls, and so just a lot of those things. So that's what this particular document is. It comes to us from NFHS.
And I think this may stem from maybe, and it was Schlegel's policy here, about wearing wigs as opposed to natural hair. I think the parent had indicated that they were required to wear a wig as opposed to wearing their natural hair. And if there was a policy to allow for them to be able to wear their own hair as opposed to having to wear a wig.
We were both contacted recently, just in the last few days, and we didn't really have a lot of knowledge, so we got on the phone and contacted each school. And as you can see from the summary here, Schlegel does have that particular guideline in their dance outfit. I spoke with the sponsor myself and asked her, where she stood on that, and kind of gave her the background of why I was asking and that we were contacting all 5 schools. And before I could really go into much, I just asked her, what is the policy and can you give rationale? And she explained, just like a band member would wear that special band hat, or that baseball kid wears that cap, I want my kids to be uniform when they perform. And every school that I contacted used that word uniform. I want the team members to be uniform. And she said, so for me, because kids do wear their hair very differently, I want them to be able to express themselves individually when they're not performing. And so in order to be uniform, we do require that they wear a wig. And so she saw it kind of backwards, that it allows them to remain an individual outside of that performance time. But when we're performing, we are uniform. And so that was her rationale.
So are all the wigs the same?
They are the same. I asked her next who provides those, who pays for those, asked each of the sponsors how they come up with money. She said her organization actually provides the wig. It's part of the costume. They provide that for the kids.
So before the children try out, is this made known to the parents or whoever their guardian is, that this is the procedure, the protocol, so there's no surprise?
I'm not sure of the answer to that. I know we do have a new teacher there this year. Not sure how the policy was shared with parents. Something we can certainly put in place moving forward.
I think that would help, so it's no surprise, because when I was first brought up on this, and my niece goes to Lincoln, and she's on the drill team, and I said, are there any requirements? She said, oh yeah, you have to buy a wig and you have to have this. We were told that at the beginning. If not, then this is not for you. And if you want to participate, this is what we require. We want you to be an individual, but this the uniformity, back to what you had said earlier, was the constant thing. So I think if we let them know in advance, then you have a choice. It may not be something that you want to do, but if you want them to participate, then they have to adhere. I don't care what we're in. We all have things that we have to make adjustments to.
Right, but that's where I disagree, because this is a public school and these are public activities. And from my understanding, was that someone with natural hair, and if you had straight hair, you could wear your own hairstyle. But if you had natural hair that didn't fit the straight hairstyle, that's where we would have to make sure that it's fair and unbiased. And so just because at a university they may be required to wear or purchase a wig, we need to still adhere to what about who determines the comfort and uniformity? What determines if a person, what if they're allergic to the wig? That means they just can't wear it. So I think we need to just dig a deeper dive into ensuring what parents are saying, and that we fully understand that in this instance, you know, the organization may be asked to purchase it, but what about if it's an extra $300? Or what if it's an extra cost or expense that's not shared up front?
That is a question I asked the sponsor.
Right.
Thinking it might come up tonight. She said that the organization actually provided it.
That's what she said.
So that no child had to purchase the wig on her own. She also explained that all of the children wore the wig, and so it wasn't the straight hair versus the, you know, the natural versus the whatever.
It's all the same
They were all
wig.
the same.
I think what Ms. Pate is saying, and I do agree, that if it's clarified in the beginning, the parents and the child can make that decision whether or not they're going to be a part of that. If not, that's left up to them. If there is an allergy and you know that they're wearing the wigs, then you don't participate. But we have to make sure that there is uniformity across the board for all. I just thought it was too much diversity from each school.
Right.
I think that there's a need, whereas for all of them to have the same message of what it's going to be. Because when it says about must be maintained and tasteful, my interpretation of that is different from hers probably. So I think there needs to be some type of uniformity.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree there should be uniformity across the board rather than this school, that school, you know, because we want to encourage them to participate in school activities without having a negative impact on them.
Any other discussion?
The lady that contacted us earlier this year, she was concerned about natural versus the wig hair. You also have to remember we have kids from so many different cultures, so many different colors of hair, so many different types of hair. Requiring them all to have a wig could be problematic.
I agree. So, what would be the resolve, Dr. Faust? For us? For us?
If I have to wear a wig.
For us to talk more about a uniform policy. For us to work towards a uniform policy as.
I would suggest getting a committee together to sit down and discuss it and come up with a plan.
So could we tailor it back to the ADs of the school, the sponsors, and they all sit down and create one district plan for, I'm sure the football team has this specific helmet type or whatever, but I know different dances require different types of, I don't want to get in, I promise you, this is not something that I want to step into. When it comes to hair and salons, that's not my area of expertise, but if we can have a conversation with them, not we, but if you two can have conversations with the sponsors and then just bring back the updates. I would say by the second board meeting in April, would that be?
That'd be good.
Could we do that? Would that be enough time? Okay. Works for me.
Okay. And thank you all for taking the time to investigate. And we do want to consider everyone, but we also have to remember, in this big world, there are rules, there are things we all have to adhere to. We may not want to. If you move in a certain neighborhood, if you choose to live there and they say everything has to be blue, if you choose, you got to have a blue house.
But the difference is public funding, public school, public schools, public, it's a difference. That's all I'm saying.
But you still
have the KSHSAA requirements. It has to follow this.
Right.
And if you're following that, if they want to be a part of it, I think they will.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Again, thank you so much. We appreciate the concern, and hopefully we can find a happy medium. I think we will, and hopefully everyone will be happy, and we'll move on. Because not to say this is not important, but we want to make them strong academically as well. That's our number one point. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
At this time, it's set first read proposed changes to board policy IFCB field trips.
This one has my name on it. So I want to recommend that we accept the first read proposed changes of the board policy as submitted by the legal counsel and as recommended by myself, Charles Faust, superintendent.
So moved.
So to clarify, the changes are in red? Is that what I'm clarifying? And so could you summarize the rationale for the change or give us a little background?
I can give you some. We've had a couple of field trip situations that have cropped up in during the last school year that didn't really fit with under the current policy. Some of those required extended stay out of state. Some of them also were looking at situations where there might be international travel involving students. Now, the school district historically has had or had students and faculty members that have taken trips overseas for international visits. Those are usually sponsored by entities outside of the district and are not affiliated or associated with the school district. The purpose of the policy, because it didn't address that in any way, was to clarify and make it clear that those international student trips, if taken, are not part of the school district's operation. In other words, we're not sending the kids over there as part of a school-sponsored trip unless we decide we're going to do that, in which case we need to clarify the policy that direction. But the current insight I was given was to have it be a situation where make it clear those are not sponsored by the school district.
Right.
That's one of the things.
So the phrase, the board does not support international student trips, it's not that we don't support students going, it's that we don't personally
Not paying
support.
for it.
Okay.
Yeah. And we can clarify that language, because as you say that, I see how that can be confusing. It's
Right.
not that we would certainly support students attending trips and going overseas or doing other activities. We're just not paying for that and sending them over ourselves.
Yeah.
You're not
It's just the
responsible
way it
for anything.
Yeah, and that's why this is a first read. So if you see things like that in there that you think are confusing, point it out. We'll try and clarify those by the second read.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. Question? All in favor?
Aye.
All approve, all disagree? The ayes have it. We're moving on. Thank you.
So I'd ask that the Kansas City Board of Education accept as an informational item the updated facility usage request agreement as submitted by Dennis Covington, Chief Financial Officer, and as recommended by myself, School Superintendent. So I do want to, there was a concern at one of our board meetings about using our facilities for memorial sites. What was in our usage agreement that stated not. So what we did is went in and cleaned up some of the language in there. So if that's on the item, and I'm sorry, that's Mr. Covington who's here, but so in here we have the updated, and it'll be in red for you.
It is.
The inserts, or if it's marked through.
So are you saying we can no longer have garage sales or rummage sales? Is that what I'm
Or state
clarifying?
sales.
That's correct.
No funerals.
So I will walk you all through the changes. This terms and conditions is in accordance with policy KG, where the board has delegated to the superintendent the responsibility of administering the guidelines for the facility's use. So as Dr. Faust said, your changes, anything that we deleted is lined through, and anything we added is in red. So on paragraph 3, your policy states that the approval is delegated to the superintendent, so we just changed the terms and conditions to reflect the policy. So we changed the board to superintendent of schools or his or her designated agent. Paragraph 5, the strike through is on the memorial services. If you approve this, we will allow memorial services, but not funerals, and no garage and estate sales.
Unless it's a fundraiser for an organization, right?
No.
Not even
No.
that? Okay.
We deleted paragraph 6 because that was sort of contradictory to what any district does. What that really said was that if you allow a church to use our facility, that if they take up collection, you have to get the money to the school.
That sounds good. Just joking.
So we thought that we should just delete that paragraph in its entirety. If you turn a couple of pages to number 23, we deleted that because that is a repeat of what's in number 3. So it was no need to restate it. And in paragraph 28, in your policy, you say that, earlier in the agreement, you say that we can use the facility on weekends. And this says that it can't be used on Sundays.
That's the weekend.
So a Sunday is a weekend.
So to clarify, we aren't restricting schools to be able, because like some of the school dances are, this is not talking about school dances.
No, that's a school-sponsored activity.
This is Okay.
Yeah. And so we also changed the board to the superintendent of schools. And then we lined through the 4-month thing, because that was also stated earlier in paragraph 3 also. So that was a repeat. And the last change was paragraph 35. We deleted that paragraph. Oh, I'm sorry, paragraph 34. So we could be consistent in the language. We changed that designated representative to designated agent, like the rest of them. And the other change was, it was just written wrong. It should have said not have instead of have not. So, did I miss one?
Second part of 33.
Oh, yes. Second part of 33, where it lists under the last bullet about the birthday parties, weddings. Earlier we had said those are not allowed. So then this was putting it back in that they could. So we scratched through that you cannot. And the last change is 35, where in the policy it says that the superintendent and his designee has the full responsibility of administering this program. This says that the board does, so that contradicted itself also. And that were all the changes.
Could you clarify number 2, the first sentence? The use of any district facility may not be used for commercial use or for personal or private gain, profit, or promotion. Now, if someone comes and wants to use our gym at Sumner for their private basketball team, and they are selling things during it, is that against the rules?
No. When they get the agreement to use the facility, they are allowed to charge gate admissions and a concession stand. Or if they have T-shirts for an event, they're allowed to sell those.
Okay. So they can provide concessions and trinkets and novelties?
Yes.
And do we have a list of charges for the for-profit
That's our next
people?
step. We do have a list of charges, but we're not we're competitive, but our pricing in that piece is not stated right. We currently have a price for it's $75 an hour to use a gym, and then there's a charge for the custodian and security. We're currently just charging for the custodian and the security. We're not charging for the $75. So the next phase is to look at the pricing for the use of all our facilities, and I will bring that back to you guys.
Okay, so that we can make sure that we are getting reimbursed for our actual costs.
We would definitely get reimbursed for all costs.
All costs, sorry. Thank you.
So if the memorial service is one thing, but no funerals?
No, ma'am. You cannot bring the body.
Or a wedding.
What?
Or a wedding.
You cannot bring the body.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So you
Okay.
can't even get married anymore, or a birthday party.
No. Yeah, what if they cremate them and they got the ashes there? I mean,
No.
People do it.
There's nothing like a good understanding. I had asked that because Mrs. Ellison, her family member, had called but she just wanted to have a memorial. She didn't want to bring a body, but she felt so many people knew him. And I felt bad because I knew what the current policy was. So we've had so many people who give blood, sweat, and tears, their money, even students, past, present, that they should, if they want to, and whatever fees for the memorial, and maybe we need to clarify that you can't bring, I hate to say that, but if you're not going to let them bring a body, then you definitely couldn't bring the ashes. It's just a memorial service.
Just a memorial.
You could bring the
funeral.
pictures and, statements and so forth. I think they would appreciate that because I felt really bad to tell her we couldn't do it. It was a policy. But I think this will open it up. And we've had employees, Marie Howe, who passed at Central, we ended up getting the church to do it, but we felt bad because we wanted her family to know they weren't from here, that people respected and appreciated their mother. And he said it meant a lot to him. So doing this would open it up, and at least if they're willing to pay the fees, you can't bring any remains or body, but a memorial. I think they would appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
They do.
Just might as well, I mean, make sure you make it plain at their memorial that they can't bring the ashes. Because a lot of people, when they have memorials, have the ashes there.
Not always.
I know it, but I mean, some of them do, so you need to make that plain.
Okay. At this time, we're on item D, except for discussion, revised purchasing procedure manual.
I ask that the Kansas City Board of Education accept for discussion the revised purchasing procedure manual as submitted by Dennis Covington, Chief Financial Officer, Kristen Woodbury, Executive Director of Business, Wayne Coral, Director of Purchasing as recommended by myself, Charles Faust, Superintendent.
Any question?
I feel like this is the Dennis show. Wayne is here. We sent out the purchasing manual, and it's a lot of words. So we're here to answer any questions that you may have concerning that document.
I guess first of all, I wanted to apologize for not being there at the Saturday meeting. I was moving my son to Chicago to chase his dream of being a stand-up comedian.
Oh, wow.
No, just kidding.
So, we did it, we accomplished it, and again, I'm sorry I missed the meeting. Any questions that you have about what you've read so far?
Good question.
Yes, ma'am.
And thank you. And again, as usual, read are the changes, right? So on page 56, in red it says schools and departments are limited to one food purchase per school year for staff. Does this, what about central office, what about sports teams? How is that dealt with?
Okay, so you're on page 56, rules governing food for staff purchases? That's what you're talking about, right?
Correct.
Okay, so the decision was made, and this policy has been in effect for about a year now. It covers the schools and departments. Departments include central office as well.
Okay.
Okay, so if the purchasing department wanted to have an event for its staff, my staff, we would only get one per year. We'd be limited to $10 per staff member, and then that would be it. We wouldn't be eligible for any other food-related events.
What about sports teams, debate teams, forensics, events at schools?
Well, the students are different. I mean, they get the student activity, or not student activities money, but student-related funds. We don't limit them to one event per year.
So those purchases come out of student activity funds?
No, it's not student activity funds. I misspoke. It's budgeted student. It's like a student activity, but it's coming out of regularly allocated funds.
So when we have payables, how do we tell the difference?
Well, there's a description of the event that they're having. I mean, and the budgeting code tells us too. If it's a 1,000, it's for students. If it's a 2,000 in the function area, that tells us it's for staff.
Okay.
The budgeting code tells us how we're allocating, how the money is being spent.
Okay. Well, in the future, I guess I'll ask for explanation when there could be a
discrepancy.
Well, I wouldn't say discrepancy. I'll just say an amount that seems excessive. Let's say to Hy-Vee, $4,000.
Yes.
That's all we see. So how would one know that it was this
Well, you
without
asked the right
asking?
question for me to produce the receipt for it, so
Okay.
you can see what it is. And we'd all tie it back to the purchase order that has a description of what the event is.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
But with that new system, will we have been able to pull it up for ourselves?
Yes.
Okay.
You missed that, ma'am, earlier.
Yes, I realize that, thank you.
That just leads me to a lot of questions for you too, so. There you go.
And on here, do we have any, I was trying to find it, where it says that if a previous vendor did not perform, we will not accept them. Something about like...
We generally don't debar a vendor. We will write them. There is a section in here that has an evaluation section. It's on page 41, and it's in the contract administration section 2 on page 40. But there is a new evaluation report for contractors' performance. And it would be counted against them in the future if they did not perform under the contract. But we have to document the deficiencies before we can hold it against them. In the past, people have complained that a vendor's not performing very well, but they haven't documented it. So it's hard to hold them accountable when we have no documentation.
So now we're able to do that?
Yes. With us, yes. Any other questions?
Can we move on to the next item?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Before we move, now will they go over this and make sure that all the buildings, they understand? Because last year there were a lot of unnecessary rumors about us taking cards and doing things which wasn't true.
Well, the cards were recalled to the building. Recalled from the buildings back to central office, so we'd have better control over them. They were becoming the primary method of purchase by the schools. It was just too easy to swipe the cards. Staples is our office supply provider, and we should buy using POs from them every time. They have an online ordering system. They have a place where we can put the PO number, and then, we get the stuff. People were buying from Staples with the Visa, and it was just, the Visa was never intended for that. It was intended for emergencies and for times when a vendor would not accept a purchase order. Again, it was shifting from being an emergency to the primary method of purchase, so we pulled it back. They can still use the Visa. They just have to go through a few more steps, and we maintain the card here. We open the card for a limited period for the amount that they ask for, and when they're finished with it, they have to return it to us.
So what about traveling? Or have you got to that?
Same thing. They have to check out the card. We open it for a limited period for the amount that they think they're going to spend. If they have a problem, I think that they need a little bit more. The purchase card administrator, Mindy Danbury, and I have access to the system. We get calls at home, and we can access the system and make adjustments there.
So have we ever thought about, if, let's say I'm going to Vegas to a convention, we're at Caesar's Palace, that room is already paid for in advance. There's no need for a card for that because it's already paid for. They don't do that.
Right. Well, yeah, we do that kind of things. We pay registrations in hotels. Sometimes hotels won't take a purchase order, though.
Okay.
But they will take a prepaid check with the, the ones that...
Generally, sometimes, but, I don't know. We've never had to take a check.
I was part of a prior district, and we thought that, and the 5 of us went to a hotel with a check from the district.
No, prepaid, so that they have it, it's cleared. When you get there, all you have to do individually is maybe put up a credit card for your own incidentals, but that is, we do that at the college all the time.
Hotel name, but we showed up thinking our rooms were secure because we sent them the check 2 weeks in advance.
Well,
they wanted a credit card.
It's a matter of safety too. We don't want them spending on their personal credit card and then requesting reimbursement.
Well, usually incidentals are on the individual, but nevertheless. How many credit cards do we have out?
130.
Still have 130?
Yes.
And I think there is a there is a reference that first. I guess 2 questions. One, please. When did it come to your attention that there were some challenges with the procedure that you had been using for at least the last 3 or 4 years?
Challenges for?
Just what you just said, why there seemed to have been some reason to change.
We noticed it for a while, and there were some buildings that were just using it as their primary means, and we just made the decision to pull it back in consultation with the CFO.
Okay. So Dr. Faust, is this, help me remember, is this a first read or is this a second read? Where are we?
It's essentially a first read.
Okay. This is something that I hadn't noticed before. On page 11, it talks about the superintendent's purchase card. All purchases made by the superintendent shall be subject to periodic review by the president of the board. And that is interesting.
Policy.
That I think it probably should be the entire, if anybody's going, I mean, I think having just two people look at it is not as transparent as it needs to be. And what's interesting to me, I don't remember seeing that the last 2 or 3 years.
Bottom of page 11.
Page 11.
Yeah, page 11, final paragraph.
So
this is the credit card for.
I would be interested in expanding that to the full board and not just one individual, because it seems one individual, not the superintendent, is not transparent enough. But that's my comment on that.
I'll check into this.
And so where it talks about, it would be starting page 22, the control pay end user instructions, are staff being trained on this? Or
Yes.
Is this new?
No, control pay is when we transferred from UMB to Commerce Bank back in 2016. We took up with control pay. Actually, what you're seeing here is now obsolete because they updated the software just in the past couple of weeks. And
so this will be removed and
yeah, this will be removed and replaced. The screens look a lot different, and so the whole process is different now.
So we'll look forward to seeing the updated version.
Yeah.
Thank you. Those are my questions, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? And that was our first read, so we'll wait, and then when you come.
I'll send them back to you, and I'll get you some answers for that superintendent's card question.
Okay. Thank you, sweetheart. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Now we're ready for our consent agenda. Are there any items we want to pull?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded we accept the consent agenda. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Opposals?
I do have a question for Dennis Covington. For the snacks that they get out of after-school programs and things of that nature, is that a different company than what's proposed here? You know, the after-school snacks that they give to the kids who stay late and things like that. Is it from the same company?
Nutrition.
Right,
Okay.
they buy those snacks through our nutritional service program.
Okay, I was just gonna, if we could review, if you could review the types of snacks. I've been told they're high in sodium for the children. If we could just review the nutrition elements of it. We were challenged when we were doing our board tours to taste the food that we're given to our children and taste the after-school snacks and look at them. And it was reported there is a high level of sodium that we're giving children to send home. So if you could just kind of look at that and review for yourself to see your determination, to see if there's healthier options.
Yes. I will get with Josh, our child nutrition manager, and we will review.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to move on to payment of bills.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Okay.
On page 22.
Which one?
Which document?
The first, I'm sorry. The very first payables.
22.
I thought we already approved it.
No.
Payables?
No,
Consent.
not the bills.
Page 22, there's a KASB $9,000 software. What is this software used for?
Board docs.
board docs. You must be throwing your voice. You see your mouth move. Heard from coming at the end of the table.
I knew that one.
Which one?
Board docs.
What page?
Ms. Westfall, what's the $9,000 for?
It's for our board docs.
Thank you.
22, you said.
Sorry, I knew that one. I was excited.
We like excitement. Thank you. And that's the only question I had, Madam President.
Okay. Any other questions? If none, can we get a motion?
I move we pay our bills.
It's been moved that we pay our bills.
Second.
Second. Any questions again? All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Anyone opposed? We will pay our bills. Thank you. Okay. Okay, now we go to executive session.
You should have them. Does she have them?
Yeah, it's here somewhere there.
Now we're ready for executive session A, recess to executive session to discuss planning for teacher negotiations pursuant to the exception for employer-employees negotiation under KOMA. Need a motion for the board to recess into executive session at
7:25.
At 7:25
How long?
to 7:45?
Yes, so 20 minutes.
Okay, 20 minutes. And we will stop at 7:45.
Resume.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And with no action to follow. It's been moved and second. Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Nays? And so be it. So